All right, moving over to the defensive side of the ball, let's start with the defensive line. They lose Jaquez Bristol, Quandario Lee, Maurice White, and Robbie Stewart, but return Jason Williams, Michael Heldman, Jonah Pace, and others. How did that group look this spring? What did you hear about that group on the in the locker room? And then, uh, is there a player you expect to kind of stand out this fall?
Yeah, are you talking player to stand out on the defensive line or just defense in
Yeah,
general?
defensive line.
Defensive line, I think it starts with Michael Heldman. I mean, they love his motor. He was a little dinged up in spring ball, so I didn't see him a ton because that's a guy that they want fully healthy coming into the fall. But he was that end piece that they felt going into last year could be the replacement for some of the guys that they've had since Coach Mack and Rob Akey now, who's been here for 6 years since Coach Mack got here as the DC. They feel like Michael Heldman's that next guy, and we saw it at spurts for last year from Michael. Again, it's can we see it every game? Can we see it every quarter? Can we see it every play where he's able to force some issues for the opposing quarterback? Because that was a weakness last year. They didn't get as much pressure. They didn't force as many turnovers. And then you look at the numbers on the back end. Well, the numbers don't look as good from the defensive backs because there wasn't as much pressure up front. So I know that's certainly a key for them heading into 2024. We've got to get pressure on the quarterback, and I think Michael Heldman can be that guy. Again, they also they added one new piece from Garden City CC and Highland CC. I don't know how to say his name yet. Pius Ajugo. That's what I'm going to throw out there. Pronunciations, we usually do those in the fall. We haven't got a chance to talk to these guys yet, but adding more depth, just as they did on the offensive line, I think is only going to help the pieces that they have come back. But I do like the experience that they've got back because they did lose the members you're talking about, but they also had new faces that were thrust into more pivotal roles last year that should pay benefits this year where they're going to step into more of a role. Now it's just finding that one or two edge rushers or defensive tackle that can get to the quarterback consistently. That makes a huge, huge difference for a Rob Akey defense that he's aggressive. He likes to blitz. He likes to bring pressure. But if you can sit back in man-to-man defense or zone defense and you can rely on one or two defensive tackles or defensive linemen, rather, to go get pressure, it makes things a lot more complicated for the offense that's trying to score points on the other side against you.
Moving over to the linebackers, you lose leading tackler Kyle Moretti, but return Dakota Cochran and Justin Whiteside. How did the linebacking group look in the spring?
It looked good. This is another one that you look at the strength of both units. You think one running backs, wide receivers, and there's potential for more. Defensively, it's the linebackers, and the linebackers have been stacked for a couple of years now. They've done a really good job of building the depth. So, I mean, Kyle Moretti was so good. He's fun to watch, kind of that old school football player that he flew around and he was tough. He was in your face. He made the plays that he needed to. He was a great leader, and they loved him. He moves on, and now there's guys that are almost just as good or just as athletic, ready to go. I mean, Dakota Cochran was outstanding last year. He's maybe the most athletic of the group. I would expect him to have a big year. But then you get Jordan Kwiatkowski, Fernando Sanchez III, and a couple others that made some big plays and had some moments as well. So linebacking, I would say, is the strength coming into 2024 for this defense under Rob Akey.
Speaking of the linebacker, you bring in Notre Dame transfer Nolan Ziegler, who I guess just adds to an already strong room. He was a kind of a high-level recruit for Notre Dame. What do you think we can expect for him in 2024?
Well, he's got to earn his spot. I mean, you said it. That group is talented, and I don't think Ziegler's any shake either. I mean, I think he's gonna be good, but he's got to come in and he's got to earn it because that room is loaded with talent. And to be able to get a guy with that caliber that maybe didn't have the success at Notre Dame that he was hoping to and hopes to have more success in the MAC, I think that's going to be an asset to bring him in. And we'll see how he fits in because that group is so fun to watch. They fly around, and I'm really excited to see how they come together, even without Kyle Moretti, who's a big loss. And man, he was such a great guy, great leader. That unit should be set, and I expect them to help carry the defense. And we talked about, guys, you find your identity early in the season. It's tough for these mid-major teams because you're playing San Diego States and Illinois and, last year, Power 5 teams. You're going to Michigan State, Notre Dame. It's tough to kind of build your identity when you're playing teams that have a ton of athletes and are expected to win those games. But that's when you got to make your headway before you head into conference play. And I think the linebackers are going to be ahead of the curve coming in terms of this team, this unit, finding out who they are. They know who their linebackers are and the talent that they have in that room.
Do you think is it too early, or did someone kind of step up to kind of fill Moretti's role in the middle, or you think that's still kind of be determined in fall camp?
Yeah, I think it's Dakota Cochran. I mean, there were moments last year where Kyle was injured. He went down for a few games, and the toughness for that kid to come back and play through his injury was remarkable. Just shows you the competitor that he was. But Dakota Cochran flies around, guys. If you haven't seen number 11, you need to watch this dude because he can move laterally. He can get you. He's physical. He can stuff a hole. I think he's that guy that fills in. And don't sleep on Jordan Kwiatkowski. He may be the biggest hitter in the linebacker room that we have. And when he thumps you, you can hear it up from the press box at Kelly Short Stadium. So I think those two guys are certainly going to be 1A, 1B. Cochran was kind of the starter last year when Moretti went out, but Kwiatkowski was the main backup to come in as well to shore things up in the middle.
In terms of that returning depth in the defensive backfield, it seems to have taken a big hit, losing leading tackler Trey Jones, Javarius Sims, Lavario Wiley, and DeJavian Stepney. They do return Deontay Kent, Caleb Spann, Deron McKine, and Elijah Rickard, and some others. But they also bring in a quarterback from Iowa in Brennan DeFernandez. What can we expect from that group here in 2024?
Yeah, certainly Trey Jones is a huge loss. I mean, they loved him. He's a great leader, and he just been around, right? He was a guy that loved Coach Mack, and he comes up from Alabama, and it feels like he'd been here since Coach Mack had been here. So to lose him is certainly, going to be tough. But I think it's a group similar to what we're talking about with the defensive line, where you lose some guys, but then you've got other guys that last year had to step in and fill some roles. Now it's the DB's turn, where they've got guys that can fill in the roles of the guys that have left who had experience last year, but they maybe weren't your starters at times. I think there's opportunity there for them to be a better unit. Dante Kent is a leader back there. He's been in Mount Pleasant now and heading into his senior year. Lockdown corner, vocal, a guy that they're going to rely upon. I thought Deron McKinney took a big step forward last year. He made some big plays for CMU when they were searching and trying to find a corner that could defend, because, again, they got picked apart at times because quarterbacks, I think back to Sam Hartman sitting in the pocket all day in South Bend, and I think their first 2 touchdowns were 75-plus yards. And you're looking going, what's going on with the cornerbacks? The quarterbacks got all kinds of time to throw, and Notre Dame's got great athletes on the outside. So that is a part of the defense that's got to come together, where we talked about it. You got to get some rush. You got to be able to help guys out. But those were moments last year for like a Deron McKinney, who's experiencing things for the first time in Mount Pleasant. He's back this year. He's got some experience under his belt. Dante Kent has been here to add some of that knowledge of what it's like to compete under Rob Akey's defense. And again, they also added a couple of pieces. You mentioned the transfer from Iowa, but they went and got, I think it's Ja Returner from Albany State. He's coming in, and Akeem Snell from St. Francis as well. So you add some more pieces. Snell, by the way, he's going to fit right in. He had an interception in Waldo Stadium last year against Western Michigan. So if he wants to do that against the Broncos again this year, nobody in Mount Pleasant's going to be upset about it. So adding the depth there and bringing back some of the experience, that is going to help. But I'm with that group as a whole. They've got to be better this year in 2024 than they were last year.
Do you envision, or who do you envision kind of stepping into that Trey Jones' role?
I think it's to be determined right now. Not anything that I saw in spring ball that said, hey, it's going to be this guy or it's going to be this guy. I just know in terms of the leadership role, because that was a big cog for Trey Jones. He was vocal, and the guys listened to him. They respected him. But Dante Kent has to be that guy this year. He is the leader of the defensive backs, whether he's corner, safety, it doesn't matter. Nickel, they can move him around. And I wouldn't be surprised if they put him potentially in different spots and maybe he's that guy. But I think it's too early to tell who is going to replace a guy like Trey Jones that's been here. But in terms of leadership, you're relying a lot on Dante Kent this year to step up and fill that part of the void.
If you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who would that be?
Yeah, I know I mentioned his name, Jordan Kwiatkowski. I love this kid. He's a physical hitter. He was the backup linebacker last year, played in 11 games, and you saw some of it in fall camp. I remember thinking going into the season last year, who's this number 12 kid? What's his Kwiatkowski? You know, I'm trying to figure out how to say his name and trying to get an idea of who's this dude that's laying the wood every time I come and check in practice. And it was Jordan Kwiatkowski, and he played 11 games last year, backup linebacker, I think 30 or so tackles, got to the quarterback a couple of times, had a few pass breakups. Dakota Cochran is certainly, I think, the guy that sets the standard this year, but I would not be surprised if you see number 12 on the field and key spots on key downs this year. And I think for a full season showcasing his experience, I think he's got a chance to have a really, really special 2024 season.
1, 2, 1, 2.